Hello YouTubers and all our clients at InStar Alliance here in the Washington DC area. Today we're going to talk about how to create a prosperous mindset through retirement with InStar Alliance. If you've noticed in the past on all our episodes, we never really talk much about the company, exactly what we do. The reason why is because we're doing that when we're out in the field with our clients. They have a pretty good understanding of what we offer. But because there are situations where people who aren't in the Washington DC area and may be curious of exactly how we work, then we decided to make this particular episode so they can get some better understanding. Maybe perhaps they know of people here in the Washington DC area that might prosper from it. But in order to understand why a person should even attempt to change their normal turn of events, that's what we want to discuss today. From what most people usually do, you have to look back at the past a little bit. We had discussed about the Federal Reserve, and there's an episode on it, and the episode's basically gives you an idea how it was formed. I think if you grabbed 10 people in the U.S. and asked them if the Federal Reserve is part of the federal government, I'd say probably 9 would say yes. 1 would say no. And the 1 that said no was correct. The 9 that said yes are just in a fairy tale world. Basically, it's a central bank, and it was created by 6 very wealthy men. And as I mentioned earlier, we had an earlier episode about it. They had controlled 1/6 of the wealth of the population of the earth. If such a thing is possible, I believe it is. They were incredibly wealthy. They would get together in this place called Jekyll Island, which was off the coast of Georgia, at a very exclusive club. Anyway, the federal government decided to, once the auto industry was created, that they needed a vast amount of income. So they tapped into these people. I don't know how much damage that they did to those particular 6, but they used it. And from that point, I want to say probably from the early 1900s up through 1980 when Reagan got into office, okay? They were charging taxes as high as 90% on the income, depending on how the income was created, on the rich. And they used that to build the infrastructures and all the things that we automatically take for granted, within the country, the highways, freeways, things of that sort. A lot of hospitals, medical different things. There was some private funding, but for the most part, a lot of it was being paid by them. They still lived a decent life, even on the 10%. But that caused this rift within the rich people. And the rich people said, no more. And after the mid-50s, when we hit our height of capitalism, then they went one step further. They began to look at ways to get people away from normal savings and things that we do at InStar Alliance towards credit. And credit began to get born. And it began with the Diners Club, later on the American Express. It was just supposed to be a 30-day loan. When people would travel on vacation, they might see something, do something, want to buy something, and they couldn't do it. They just weren't prepared. They didn't have enough cash on hand. There weren't credit cards, at that time. That came along later on. And basically, it helped to give people the sense that if I don't save money to buy things and I buy it on credit, I don't have to worry about saving money as much. And that's the sad truth. By the time you hit 1980, a lot of people, backing up quickly through the 70s, the oil embargo, our dependence on oil created a scenario of inflation, which ousted Carter, and in came Reagan. Reagan was a good spokesman. He was an actor, and he just kind of bent over, took it up. in order to allow Merrill Lynch and other companies to kind of redefine American greed. And capitalism kind of died pretty much from that point on. It created an uber society. And after that point, when he got on board and these other banks and Wall Street, it became a humongous firestorm that merged with the Federal Reserve. And every time there's a problem, the different busts, which create other problems. For example, when they flood the money markets with additional printed capital, what happens at that point is basically by flooding it, it basically creates a scenario in which people end up losing a lot of money. When the housing bubble, they flooded the market, and then as long as you were having a post, you could buy a house. A lot of middle class people bought homes as rental incomes. And then when it went bust, because Wall Street went a little hog wild with no controls over it, from that point on, they flooded the market again and allowed these private investors to come in, get this capital, and then buy back all these homes. And these people were bankrupted. And these things have gone on, and we've talked several times about it from the 7th and the 8th of the decade when these pullbacks occur. But basically, if you're looking to the federal government to help you for retirement, it's pure and utter insanity. They are helping the 0.1% They created an uber-rich society within the rich because of it. And that was the dream that these 6 guys had, is to get back at the U.S. for the wealthy having to basically take care of the rest of society. The closest point in U.S. history where it was middle class living on one income was in the upper 50s. But unfortunately, like I said, not all factors were taken into play. For example, you were coming out of a war, we blasted Japan, Germany was in ruins. If you look today, a lot of the car industries, a lot of the competition comes from those 2 areas. They didn't have competition. So the American car industry was thriving only because of that. And, I never realized it until I did my research on it, but unfortunately that's the reality that we've dealt with. I think Trump wanted to create another 1950s, which was aggressively white, and they all were living well, and it just couldn't be done. And then he went one step further and decided to go ahead and clear out all the resources the IRS has in order to keep the government functioning normally. So that spurge that we thought it was sort of anemic. It wasn't a real, true building that was done during the Obama era. But in any event, my point to you here is 401ks get drained out through options. IRAs get drained out through options. Wall Street's taking care of its own. The Federal Reserve is taking care of Wall Street. Who's taking care of you? No one. So my point to you is, if you want to get your life together, basically, you have to take care of you. They kind of follow under the pretense that people are lazy, and they're right. Most people are lazy when it comes to their finances. Why? Because they don't have any form of training in it. You can't get it in colleges and universities. They don't sit you down and explain to you, this is what you need to do. And they fall on the thoughts of the federal government to help them. But the federal government is not really the federal government. What's really controlling the overall economy that's going to help them is a privately owned group of bankers. They're the next generations of those 6 guys that I talked about. And basically, they're looking out for their own. So what can you do? How can you help yourself? Well, first of all, you got to realize that you got to let go. If you've been putting money into 401ks, you've been putting money into IRAs, I advise stop putting money in it, because it's going to drain out at some point from a pullback. It's just the way the system is designed. The system is designed to fail you. It's designed to clean you dry. It's designed to create uber rich. And it's done so, and it will continue to do so. Rich, you're not going anywhere. I hate to talk about my own kind, but it is what it is. I became one of them because I understood the system. You have to understand the system. They use what they call boundary markers. People like, back in the day, Michael Jackson and other people who they're saying, well, see, look, these people came from nothing. He came out of a small town in Indiana, became a super mega star. Chances are, unless you have some really special gift and skill, you're never going to get it that way, okay? What we teach here at InStar Alliance is simple. We teach you to take care of you, okay? You become your own bank. You don't worry about all these different interest rates that you end up having to pay. And if you have them, then we teach you to get out of them. How do we do that? Basically, the banks are choking the life out of the American public by not paying any interest on the money that they try to save. What we do is we have programs that are in place working with a few financial institutions, one of them being Bank of America, and a few other ones. I can give you the names of them, but the thing is, you probably have never heard of them before. You've heard of Bank of America pretty much anywhere in the U.S. for the most part. Someone's heard of that. But these things are what we call more long-term. You can't really do it unless you're doing it in the stock market, and we taught you how to work the stock market. And you have to understand it's short-term, not long-term. And that's why 401ks crash and burn like they do. It's not designed that way. The wealthy won't allow it to be that way. They're the one that move the markets there. So unless you don't have the time to do that, and then we also discussed as well about different types of alternate residual income. And that is a good option to have so that, if your job fails you, which most jobs do because you just don't make enough money and wages have been stagnated for so long since at least the early 80s, that you need to look at creating more wealth with what income that you end up creating. Be it from job, be it from residual income, wherever the income comes from. What we do, the first program, we usually recommend people to at least try it out 3 to 5 years. Most people say, I don't want to tie my money up in that like that long. Well, if you don't tie your money up in something and get in with a contract on something, then what's going to happen is every year the APR rates on your savings are going to go lower. And it has. I noticed on one of my accounts, not that I use it for that purpose, but I see from the paperwork that gets mailed to me that it dropped from 6.68% that was supposed to be their high-end earning savings account down to 0.43%, and it's expecting to drop to 0.34%. You can't make money that way. It's minuscule. Luckily, I was with a credit union where one of their financial advisors pulled me to the side and says, hey, you need to try this, you need to do this. And, it wasn't exactly what I needed at the time, but it helped. It helped immensely because it opened my eyes to realize that you can't follow the same path that everyone follows. You can't be sheep. You can't walk down the same path. You can't just work one job, pray that it covers all your expenses, pray that nothing else happens, pray that you don't lose it from the virus, and put your money in a 401k and pray that it makes money. I believe in prayer. I'm a religious person, but God helps those who help themselves. So if you don't help yourself, then you're asking for trouble. The other one, that first one that I discussed, it was 4.75%, and it compounds annually, and that's pretty cool. You can build up some income, way better than 0.5%. You can try to pay down some of the debt on all those different interest rates of credit cards and stuff. You have to have a goal. You have to have a plan. You need to get out of debt, and that's how the wealth gets created. Rich people buy what they need. They don't create a whole lot of wealth. Debt, unless that debt is what they consider good debt, like Robert Kiyosaki talks about. Buying real estate and knowing that you're going to make a lot of money with it and that sort of thing. Those goals have to be proven before you try them. The other one is, as I mentioned before, with Bank of America. Bank of America works with another company. They don't do it directly, they do it indirectly, but they finance it. And then at that point, you got to stick with that one for a lot longer, 10 years or more, at least 10 years. But then you make 6%. So some people might want to go with the 4.75 because they don't have to tie it up as long. We usually recommend people trying that 3 to 5 years. But for year to year, there isn't anything. You can try CDs. Yeah, maybe they might go for 1 year. You might get 1.34% or something. But in order for you to make money, you have to be willing to invest it in a system that's not tied to the markets that are draining the lifeblood out of you, and use that towards good. How do you do that? By being willing to take the chance of not following the herd. And that is the best words that I can explain to you. What is the herd? This is the herd. Showed you this picture many times. That's the herd. Okay? Looks kind of sad. But you don't want to be that herd. Okay? You don't want to follow down that long path of nowhere, so that when you get to retirement, most people have only $1,000 saved up in their savings account. They've tapped at least once or twice on the 401k if there was money to tap. And most 401ks end up around $60,000 after the options have drained them out through the wealthy. So my advice to you is, if you're in the DC area, look us up. Our number is 703-646-3941, and perhaps we can help you. Next week we're going to have a major summary on everything. That'll be the last week before the elections. What we've trained you now is that no matter who's in office, you can still prosper. I don't believe that Trump should be in office. He should be in a jail someplace for tax evasion, and I'm sure that the New York State prosecutors will be dealing with that if he does come out. I believe that's the only reason why he's in office right now for a second term, is he's hoping to avoid that. So if he makes it, it'll be a sad day in this country, especially with the virus and all the other things going on and their lack of control or care about it. You never get the economy back on track without it. All the economic models talk about it at the very least, 6 to 8 years after everything and the vaccine is done and everything is at full output again, which I can't see happening, without, those different things in place, and they're not happening. So we'll see what happens with that. And then after we get past next week then we will be adding in 2021 some additional segments as needed. We'll be talking directly with our clients. We think that we've trained you all pretty well so far. I'll be coming out myself personally for the company with a digital download that kind of outlines a lot of different things and goes into it even deeper than what I've done before. In any event, we look forward to seeing you all that are interested in it, to at least order that digital download when it comes available. And we hope that you have a safe week. But until next week, stay safe and follow our rules, because our rules will make you financially free. But you have to have an open mind, and hopefully you will. Thank you.